Alright, so recently Hakan made a video titled Hytale CEO asked me to improve mining. It was a great video, so I highly recommend you guys watch it if you haven't already. But this got me thinking. A few days ago, I made a post on Twitter talking about how passive mobs have a little too much health, and Simon replied, "Give me feedback on the passive mob health and I'll look into it." Now I'm going to do him one better and give all of my feedback on the entire combat system as a whole, and what they can do to improve it. Yes, I'm shoehorning myself and combat into this conversation. But real quick, 88% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed, so if you guys like my content, please consider subscribing. We're so close to 4,000. And if you guys plan on buying Hytale or upgrading editions, you can use code CHASER at checkout to help support me. With Hytale now having some time to resonate, a lot of multiplayer PvP servers have been coming out, and I was very eager to hop in and play, but I found myself distancing from them. Which is ironic because I'm sure most of you guys know that I'm a PvP guy and that's what I want to focus my content on. And I think the reason for that is because the fundamental mechanic of combat isn't polished yet. And look, I know this is an early access game. We knew it wasn't going to be polished before the game came out. That's why I'm not really going to talk too much about the damage each weapon currently does, because something tells me they aren't finalized yet and probably won't be for a while. I don't want to sit here and meticulously give each weapon a certain damage number because I'm not a dev and that would also take a very long time. What I will say about the current state of the weapons is that the sword and daggers are completely inferior to the axe and mace. Like I said earlier, I could sit here and explain to you that the sword and daggers don't do enough damage, but I think it's simply just because they aren't finished yet. So the current meta is just the axe and mace. If you're confused as to why you can't win a fight in PvP right now, the most probable reason is because you will not win a fight against someone using a mace or axe when you're using the sword or daggers. I'm bringing this up because it is one of the biggest reasons I believe PvP isn't great right now. Most of us probably hope that in the future, every single weapon is viable to win a battle regardless of what weapon your opponent has. But even with 4 weapons right now, there are clear winners. This is a problem that I'm sure will be fixed eventually, but I still think there are ways to improve the combat system even if all the weapons were balanced. So with that being said, let's talk about improving the more mechanical and technical side of combat. I feel like the biggest issue with the entire combat system as a whole right now is stamina. And I'll get to this in a few seconds, but I actually think one of the biggest issues that even I had while trying to construct this video is lack of information. Currently, Hytale plans to have tooltips, which basically just shows the stats of weapons and armor. They don't currently have this, which makes understanding combat rather difficult. How am I really supposed to know what weapon to craft to fit my playstyle? At the very least, we need stats on weapons showing their damage, crits, and speed. Obviously, you can see how much damage a weapon does by looking at the number that comes up when you attack, but it still needs to be shown when hovering over a weapon so that new players can at least have a general understanding of how good a weapon is. Hytale plans to add a large variety of weapons to fit people's playstyles. It would be useful to have a small collapsible description under each weapon that briefly summarizes the purpose the weapon serves. For example, the spear's description can talk about how you can throw it, it has longer range and decent knockback, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. This would give players a better idea of what each weapon does so they can choose what weapon best fits their playstyle. I only just found out a few days ago that crits are based off combo chains. I talked to a few other PvP content creators and we all seem to be figuring this out at the same time. Again, mainly for accessibility reasons, maybe each time you hit something, you get a combo number on your screen so you can see your current combo. This could be a toggleable setting, so if you don't want to see it on your screen, then you don't have to. Health bars should be slightly bigger and have numbers inside that indicates the overall HP a mob or player has left. The damage numbers on the screen are already small, so by having the number inside the bar, it will help you better understand how much damage you're actually doing to whatever you're fighting. This feature would especially be useful given later down the line when the game is more RPG-like and we have bosses and more enemies to face. Think Terraria here. You only really see the HP when you hover over the health bar. Maybe in Hytale, if they want to balance this, you can only see the mob or player's total HP if you're in range of looking at them. This feature both enhances combat and the overall adventure and RPG experience Hytale plans to achieve. Finally, I think every single weapon should be directional based, similar to the mace. Depending on the angle that you swing will affect where your opponent staggers back to. Also, please make directional combat based off the position of your mouse and camera position rather than your keyboard. It makes this feature a lot easier to understand and control. Okay, now time for the biggest complaint most people seem to share. Stamina. How do I put this? Currently, stamina in combat is all over the place. When you're in a fight, you think less about your position and more about your stamina. Which also feels bad because stamina is extremely inconsistent and nothing about its mechanic is obvious. The biggest victim of this is blocking. Blocking with shields absorb more energy than blocking without one, but the difference is so small that anyone using a heavy weapon against you will still mop the floor with you, noticing very little difference. They're so inconsistent from being absolute buns to totally busted. When you start blocking, you lose a tiny bit of stamina. Currently, this serves no purpose because on top of losing stamina when you start blocking, you also lose it when you successfully block an attack. We don't have a lot of stamina to begin with, so if you aren't the first to attack, then you'll end up blocking, losing stamina, getting hit, losing stamina, and then you only have half of your bar of stamina left, which means you're cooked. This, my friends, is where parrying comes into play. By perfectly timing a block the moment you're about to be attacked, you get some stamina back. There needs to be some system in play rewarding players with stamina to allow the flow of a fight to continue. Currently, the fight ends when one person is depleted of their stamina. Now, obviously, stamina should always be a core part of combat, but it doesn't feel good right now, and it feels more important to prioritize stamina over the actual strategy of fighting. By adding some type of stamina reward system, it'll help the natural flow of a battle. You could also add a stamina reward for maintaining combos to make the combo system more in-depth. I also want to mention that if you try and block when your stamina is depleted, you experience what I like to call shield broke, where you can't block for a certain period of time and the enemy can just hit you over and over again, and you can't do anything about it. This punishment goes on for way too long, and basically whoever gets shield broke doesn't stand a chance of turning the fight back around. An easy fix to this is to just reduce the time it takes to bring your block back up. Adding on to parrying, I think if you parry a signature move, the opponent gets sent back a little in order for you to have a chance to retake the fight. We kind of have this with block bashing, where if you block an attack at the same time, you knock the opponent back. But the issue is that it takes a considerable amount of stamina, and if you wanted to block bash someone and then try and chase them, you almost can't because you use stamina to sprint, so by the time you get to them, you can't attack or defend. Either reduce the amount of stamina it takes to sprint or reduce the stamina cost of block bashing. I also think that shield bashing should send the opponent further to give the shield more uses. I want to add another mobility feature, the dash. I totally took this idea from Chivalry, by the way, so I'm going to use gameplay from that to explain. Dashing happens when you block and then press the jump key as well as the key that moves you left, right, forwards, and backwards. It would take up some stamina but allow you to dodge projectiles, melee attacks, or just reposition in a fight for a small cost of stamina. This adds more flavor to the fight and gives a chance for players who don't have a weapon with good mobility to stand on even ground. Okay, so this is extremely controversial, but I think there needs to be a cooldown when swapping weapons. Now hear me out. The problem with having no cooldown is that if you're in a fight with someone and they get low, they can instantly swap to the daggers and use the mobility to get away, heal, come back, and repeat that over and over again. It's so annoying and seems to be a common complaint. In my opinion, it's kind of stupid how right now you can carry every single weapon in your hotbar and just switch whenever it's best suited for you. Remember, playstyle is good, but having every weapon is not a playstyle. I think if you go into a fight, you should think about what weapon you're taking and what the weapon excels at. Maybe this isn't the best fix, so another way to approach this is instead of having a cooldown when switching weapons, you have a cooldown for heavy attacks on all of your weapons. This would mean that if you use a heavy attack in a fight, then immediately try to use its mobility move to flee, you wouldn't be able to, forcing you to be more strategic when using your abilities. I think this is the better option because this allows players to still switch to other weapons and use the light attack, leaving combos on the table, but also reducing the possibility for only swapping to a weapon specifically to flee a battle. I love the dagger's mobility, but it just sucks that it's always carried just to run in fights when the other person doesn't have a mobility-based weapon like the mace. Also, when you try and drink a health potion and you get hit, your potion will be interrupted. I like this feature, but I also think it'd be better if instead of resetting the time it takes to drink it, it just slows down the time it takes to finish the potion. This is almost guaranteed to be the reason that people flee fights which lead to chases. There isn't a way to heal when you're in the line of sight of an opponent because potions get interrupted even by arrows. This forces players to retreat until they have enough time to drink a potion. I think my solution allows for the fight to continue the flow and reduce the likeliness of people fleeing in order to heal. Also, the potion of stamina is completely useless because you can't drink it mid-fight. You're just going to end up getting hit while you're trying to drink the potion. There is a potion of stamina regeneration in creative mode, but it isn't currently drinkable. And that, my friends, is my thoughts and improvements to the current combat system of Hytale. I really do want to add more and make it an even more complex system, but I think that's due for another video. So if you guys leave your suggestions and improvements down below, I'll probably end up making a part 2. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and have a good night.